It being 5:15, I'd like to call the finance personnel meeting to order. Please rise for pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Calls been taken. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. Second.
Made by Mike, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the June 4th meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Made by Tim, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment? Move on to presentation of the 2024 audit. Brent Nelson with Johnson and Black and Company. Brent?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Brent Nelson, I'm with Johnson Black and Company. We're the CPA audit firm that audits the city of New London. So I'm here tonight presenting on the 2024 financial statement. So I'm going to concentrate on a PowerPoint presentation tonight. I do have, and I can share it on my screen too. I do have the full report. It's a lengthy document. Did that go out electronically before the meeting, Judy?
It did. So the PowerPoint presentation went out separately from the audit and then the audit communication. So just the alderperson and the mayor and Chad received the actual audit along with the communication. And then I also gave a copy of the audit to Nicole in case anybody in the public would request a copy of it.
Great. So tonight, my plan was to keep a pretty high level, go over this PowerPoint, but if there is any questions on the detailed report, I can put that up on screen as well. So I'll share my screen here. Okay. Okay, and hopefully everybody can see that all right on screen. But again, I'm here presenting on the year end, December 31st, 2024. So just a general overview of our audit. So we were on site in late March is when we were actually on site at City Hall. The audit process preliminary planning starts around year end, and then it goes through, when we're on site in March, and then it continues afterward. Judy does some reporting in the spring to the Department of Revenue. And I'll mention later, we audit the city funds and the sewer utility. Another auditor audits the electric and water utility. So we audit the governmental funds. The city has many governmental funds on its books, the general fund, the TIF districts, and then there's numerous other funds. And then we audit the sewer utility. But the electric and water, those are audited by other auditors. So they provide us their report in the spring, and then we consolidate it. And our report is a citywide financial statement. So we've completed our audit. We went final with that on Monday is when everything was finalized. We issued unmodified opinions, which is a good thing. So nothing caused us any reason to modify our opinion. So it was unmodified. So we believe the financial statements in that report are in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Before we went final with everything, we sent a draft of the financial statements and a draft of the communication to management to have a chance to review, have any feedback, make any changes. So before we went final, we went through a draft process. In addition to the audited financial statements, we do have a separate audit communication document issued in conjunction with the financials. And that I won't talk too much about that. It's mostly standard communications, what we felt the significant estimates were. And a good thing for the city, there wasn't any internal control issues that we felt we had to bring to your attention. There wasn't any material weaknesses in internal control. So that's good that we didn't have any, findings, or our management letter points are more informational in nature, where fund balance is. So I wasn't going to dwell too much on that audit communication, but I invite you to read through that document. Turning to the actual numbers, the 2024 financial highlights. So in total, across all governmental funds, overall fund balance decreased $317,000. So breaking that down at the individual fund level, the general fund, which gets the most attention, the general fund increased $235,000. The capital projects fund, that fund tends to fluctuate annually because there was debt issued in 2023 that some of those funds don't get spent until 2024. So the capital projects fund decreased in 2024 by $437,000, but that isn't unique. I'm used to seeing that capital project fund fluctuate. The year prior, 2023, fund balance was way up, and now it's down.
And part of the reason why capital projects fluctuated so much is since COVID in 2020, I never used to have such a list of projects that were completed from year to year. So we're starting to finally get through some of those projects that have been sitting on our books for a while. So that's part of that too.
I'm not listing all the governmental funds here. I listed the top 6 that really fluctuated the most. The library and museum, there's been ongoing fundraising in that fund the past few years, and I'm not current on the 2025 developments, but I was assuming that was going to be going the opposite way as those costs begin to be spent down here in the 2025 and future years. TIF District number 5 is one of the newer TIFs of the city that's had the most activity, I'd say, and that there was a big borrowing in TIF District number 5 in 2023. Those costs started to be incurred in 2023, and then that continued in 2024. So that fund went down in 2024, but a driver of that was spending of debt proceeds issued in 2023. And then the tourism fund decreased roughly $257,000. And the driver of that was the city closed this fund. Those room tax dollars formerly going to the city are now going to the Chamber of Commerce. Just following state statutes, the New London Chamber of Commerce was designated the tourism entity. So that's the entity that should be handling those room tax dollars that come in. I did mention the TIF District number 5, but in recent years, the city's established 4 TIF districts, and those TIFs are doing well. I'm seeing big increment growth in those. Having said that, as of December 31st, 2024, in total, those TIFs have deficit fund balances of $285,000, which isn't in the early stage of a TIF. That's not uncommon. They're not generating revenue, and that construction takes time. There's a lag time between construction and when revenue dollars start coming in. So early stage deficits isn't uncommon, but it is definitely something to monitor. If there is a cash deficiency where expenses are exceeding revenues, the general fund has to chip in or basically cover for a period of time. And you don't want the general fund to have to cover deficits for too long. But overall, seeing strong growth in the TIF districts, but there is some deficits to keep an eye on as of 12/31/24. General fund, just doing some budget to actual. Favorable results. Actual revenues for 2024 were higher than were budgeted, and then actual expenditures were less than budget. So the general fund, that's driving that increase in fund balance. Net position of the electric utility. So the electric and water utility and the sewer utilities are all separate self-sustaining funds. Electric and water is its own fund. It had an increase in fund balance or in net position of $667,000. And the sewer utility also had an increase of $356,000. So positive net incomes for the year. Looking at a 5-year trend in the general fund balance, and as you can see by the graph, everything's been very steady in the general fund. So looking back at December 31st, 2020 compared to where fund balance is as of December 31st, 2024, really not a lot of change. at the end of 2024 is where it is the highest it's been the last 5 years, but not by much. It's all been within a narrow, 6.3 million to 6.6, 6.7 million. So, general fund has different classifications of fund balance. There's restricted fund balance, assigned fund balance. The city has a policy on what it wants its unassigned fund balance. So unassigned fund balance is basically discretionary money where it's not earmarked for anything. There's no strings attached to it. So of this 6.6 million of fund balance, 3.4 million, 3,451,000 was classified as unassigned. And what governments often do is they compare unassigned fund balance to annual expenditures. So when I do that calculation, unassigned fund balance is 45% of annual expenditures. And the city's fund balance is it wants that ratio to be at least 25%. So the city's well within its policy there. And that 25% level is very common for what I see. I see anywhere 20%, 30%. Some smaller municipalities we work with will have it higher, but good things there. So the unassigned fund balance is well above the city's policy. This table is just a 3-year trend comparative of the general fund revenues between years. So year ended 2024 on the far right, total revenues and just the general fund of roughly 7.8 million. The biggest revenues of the general fund are intergovernmental. Intergovernmental is the biggest and large majority of that's coming from the state of Wisconsin. And then the second biggest revenue of the general fund is taxes, so mostly property taxes. So those two categories make up the lion's share of the general fund revenue. One really good thing that we saw across the board for all Wisconsin municipalities was this increase in intergovernmental revenue, where the state of Wisconsin shared revenue had been flat. What the state of Wisconsin paid to municipalities, cities, villages, towns had been flat for over 10 years. And in 2024, we saw that increase significantly. For the city of New London, it was 445,000 as a result of the passage of Act 12. So what that allowed to do, we did see that increase in the city's general fund revenue and the intergovernmental. What the city did was put more of its state highway dollars that come from the Department of Transportation into the capital projects fund. So that's been a really good thing we've seen for Wisconsin municipalities where we saw that shared revenue really go up in 2024. And then interest income has remained high. You can see in 2022, interest income, and that includes some investments, was actually negative in 2022. But here in 23 and 24, we've seen strong returns on investments on deposits. Slide 6, general fund expenditures. For 2024, another 3-year trend. 2024 expenditures were 8,494,000. So pretty comparable to what it was for 2023. So, and the breakdown of classification, so general government, public safety, public works is in agreement with how you budget, how the city budgets, and that's set by the state of Wisconsin, the classifications it wants. But really pretty consistent on general government makes up about 16% of expenditures total for the year, and that's been steady for the last 3 years. So no real swings I saw between years as far as the breakdown of expenses. Transfers, one thing I wanted to point out with transfers, so that's where the general fund is transferring money from the general fund to another fund. So the general funds had pretty significant transfers out the last couple of years. So 900,000 for 2023, 883,000 in 2024. In the last couple of years, the general fund's been in a position where it could make significant transfers to the capital projects fund to increase those reserves to do some of those projects that the city wants to do. Just a couple more slides. So might be a little small, but so this is just a breakdown of the city's long-term debt as of December 31st. And I did see on the agenda, there's some more debt set to be potentially approved here later tonight. But so this is just at December 31st. Governmental activities, so that would be your general fund, capital projects fund, basically anything non-utility. It would include your TIF districts. But at the end of 2024, bonds and notes, so your long-term debt of the city was $11,940,000. Business type activities, that would be your utilities, your electric, water, sewer utilities. They also have significant amounts of debt. So between general obligation notes and revenue bonds, the utilities have debt totaling about $13.7 million. I like to point out that the state of Wisconsin has a limitation on how much general obligation debt that a city can issue, and it's 5% of the equalized value of properties within the city of New London. So for the city of New London, that calculates that the maximum limit that the state would say can be issued by the New London is $29,902,000. Comparing that to what the city actually has in debt outstanding was $12,144,000. So there is capacity there to issue debt and still be in compliance with state statutes. Just to wrap up, so overall, just to reinforce, the city has a healthy fund balance in the general fund and all of its funds. I did point out the TIF deficits, but the TIFs are projecting well from everything I've seen. But overall, city has a healthy fund balance. It does have borrowing capacity should it ever need it. The audit process went very well. Yeah, I mentioned we were on site in late March, and the whole process went really well from start to finish. I'd take any questions if there are any questions on my presentation tonight or the detailed report.
Does anyone have any questions on the PowerPoint presentation that Brent went through, or any questions on any of the actual audit itself or any of the communication that came under separate cover? I feel like it mimics what happens here every month and what we talk about. So, we talked about the ability for our general fund to have moved substantial amount of money from the general fund over to the capital projects fund. And you guys have decided as a committee that we would continue to do that. We're not putting extra dollars into our budget. It is just what happens through time. We have a fully funded expenditure side of our budget that we meet with our revenues. And if something happens throughout the year where we have savings within our budget, we're very fortunate that all of our department heads aren't buying pencils and pens at the end of the year. They understand our focus is to be able to spend those dollars on our capital items, of which they all, want and look for dollars on that side to help with their projects and their equipment and things of that nature. So I think we have a really good thing going, continuing to move those dollars if there's any left. Again, there's no promises at the end of the year that things are going to go that way, but if they do, so he mimics some of that. Debt starts here. You try to communicate where we are within our percentage of equalized value as we go through these debt structures. So yeah, I also believe that these TID districts are doing extremely well. We're seeing some very large assessed values come in. And you will see, I do present TID districts, each and every one of them, one by one. And I will do that presentation. Actually, I'm probably going to do that at the next meeting because I just had because I did pull that away from budget time and now try to present after my annual meeting. And I just thought about that. So yeah, next meeting we'll go through each of those, and then I'll talk about how the increment is changing going into 2026. And I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised at what that's going to look like. So yeah. Anyone have any questions on anything else? Again, you can always reach out to Brent if you do, go back, read any communication. He is available for questions, if there's anything that you ever want to ask him. So, with that, do you have anything? Otherwise,
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the holiday.
You as well.
thanks,
That's it.
Brent. Happy
Yep.
4th.
All right, thank you.
Move on to consider or act on a claim. Judy?
Okay, before you is a recommendation from Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company. I get their recommendation anytime we have someone come forth asking for a settlement or look for dollars for something that happened. In this case, you can see that Submicant's requesting a denial of the
Questions?
So this was damage happened during the highway
correct.
activity.
Yep. So they point to a number of reasons for denial, including 3 separate reasons for the committee to consider denial of the claim.
I have a motion to deny the claim.
Second.
Made by Tim, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now to the resolution. On equipment purchase, DPW bucket truck in the amount of $214,000.
Okay, so last month I brought before you, or we talked about consideration of these 2 loans. So in your packet, you will find both of the information. So we actually had to request the loans from the state of Wisconsin. That's why I wanted to talk about it ahead of time. Once we request, they put the dollars aside for the city of New London. Then the process of for us as a city, this does not have to come to committee, but this is how we function as, the committees talk about it and then it goes to council. So this will be here for discussion and then it'll go to council for final approval. Then that action, as you can see, Nicole included all the information we got from the state of Wisconsin. So there's a resolution in here. And then she has this is the information that I filled out on how much. And then here's the formal information she'll have to fill out and send back to the state. And then once we do that, they meet on, I think, the 1st and 3rd Tuesday. Once they meet, then these funds are actually disseminated immediately to us. So in here again is the 2 resolutions. I don't know if she numbers those. Either you had to have a number on it or she'll provide you with this same resolution at council for approval. But the first one on the list is the the resolution to borrow for the state trust fund loan program, the amount of $214 for the DPW truck, and that is a 3-year note. Any questions on that?
So it looks like that one's at a 5.5% interest.
You are correct.
And the other one's at 6.
Correct, because of the longer period of time. Okay. Also remember our discussion of last time, this one is actually general fund dollars. So this will go on the tax roll. The other one is paid for through the TID district, so that will not hit the tax roll. It was a suggestion of Ellers. The reason we didn't bond for it, we originally thought we were gonna bond for these things, but it wasn't over $1 million and there's a lot of fees when you go out to bond. So there are 0 fees with the state trust fund loan. So we switched gears and moved over to the state trust fund loan for these dollars. And so the TID district is paying for the 10-year note, and Ellers had suggested that I make this one a longer period of time. As you can see, the auditors were talking about some of our TID districts are in deficit. It gives us time to get that increment up to be paying for it. At any time that TID district does better in 1 year or another, we can consider paying it off at a time. So we'll see. We'll have the opportunity to watch how the district performs. So that we're talking about Oshkosh Street and the value that comes into it. And we'll see. as we go through time here, and maybe we will decide that, but that gives us the opportunity to decide as we go along, instead of being stuck in real high payments. So. That answer your question?
What part of Oshkosh Street? Is,
So,
part of the TID that you're having the TID pay for it, but we're not really doing anything in the TID.
well, we have a radius of 1 mile. 1 mile is the chit. 1 mile. So the road feeds the TID district, so it's allowable expense. So then I also asked Terry, because it was 300 or 400, almost 400,000. Would it make sense that I charge this out to the TID district? Now, remember, it's only a portion of, but he said because of the grant and then the sewer paid for that portion, so we did bond for the sewer side of it. He said it makes more than enough sense for the remaining balance to be part of the TID district. So, and then I talked to the auditors about it also, because you don't want to do this and then find out they're like, that's a not. So this is a very small percentage of the total of that project. So we're very fortunate to be able to charge this to the TID district. So again, the first one would be the 214,000 for the DPW truck. And that would be a 3-year note.
Make a motion to borrow from the state trust fund loan program, 214,000 for the DPW bucket truck.
Second. Motion made by Tim, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Make a motion, we have a resolution to borrow for the state trust fund loan program, the amount of 386,000 for the Oshkosh Street project.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the finance director, monthly financial reports. Judy?
Very good. So we are, or I am presenting tonight. We are through May 31st of 2025. So if you look at it in percentages, 5 months divided by 12, you're at approximately 42%. And then you can see when you look at the actual numbers, I like to use this one in a little more detail. We're at 45%, but the reason that's a little higher is that insurance is all paid in the month of January, so that one will run higher, and in fact, just go over 100%, and then we'll see it go back under or around 100% at the end of the year. And then debt service, a lot of our debt service is paid in the beginning of the year. But otherwise, ambulance is paid by the quarter, so that's why that's at 50%. Otherwise, it's looking good right now. Looks like we'll come in budget or on budget as far as May is concerned. Does anyone have any questions on any of that? Then we will move on to the revenue side. Revenue side is also looking very healthy right now. And you'll see that grants and donations is running at 119%. And the reason for that is grants and donations are never guaranteed. So when we're looking at budgeting on the revenue side in particular, we're very conservative about what those numbers look like. We do want to go over and never under when it comes to the revenue side. So our police department actually goes out for a lot of granting that we don't know is available for year to year. So they'll do, you know, they'll get some drug dollars, or they'll get OWI, or there's just a number of things. And he'll bring me checks, you know, a couple $1,000s here and there that they get reimbursed for their overtime. He did talk, our auditor talked about GAAP. So GAAP accounting says I can't take that and push it against the overtime on the expenditure side. It's put on the revenue side and booked as a grant for donation. So sometimes, I'll have my department head say to me, how am I gonna explain that I went over a expenditure side? And said, then you have to show them your debt revenue side and show that that went over too. So then you're not concerned about the fact that their overtime went over because they have first on the end, so. But otherwise, everything is looking good also on our revenue side. Any questions on any of those? And we will move on to assigned and unassigned fund balance. Here's the capital projects that Brent was talking about. Here's that list. 324,000 of that was much larger a couple years ago. We were almost running into the million because we just couldn't get some of the things that we had as far as projects or even equipment that we could get in the door because we were so far behind. But it is starting to dwindle down. We also, once we decide we want to do a project, don't want to pull it from the list. So this is a way for us to keep track of what's going on from year to year. Every year I email the department heads, hey, I'm doing my year-end estimates. What have you and have you not? A lot of times I go into their office and visit with them and we go right through the list and what have you done, what have you done? So then we talk about where did it come in as far as budget's concerned. So that gives me an idea of the dollars also that can be moved if they are able to be moved from one fund to the other. So that's where we're at with the capital. I don't think anything else that's really changed here. I will be able to update our unassigned fund balance. As he said, I think it's more at 3.4 million. So I will not have the estimate up there anymore. I'll put that true number up there. I'll try to update that for the next meeting. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions on any of these?
For the unassigned fund balance, the engineering of the Newton Blackmore Trail is at 50,000. Last night, did we agree to pull 20,000 out of that fund, or are we adding that to that fund?
You would be pulling out of that.
We're pulling it out of there.
That would be coming out of to council for final approval for that. But yeah, you can take it out here. And I think Ginger said she had some grant funding from Pack County Greenways Fund that will help fund some of that as well. So yeah, that's
So
definitely would come out of
that'll be lower next month because it'll be pulled out of there for.
It'll be lowered once we expend that. So
Mhm.
it'll take a little bit before those bills come in. But yes, yeah, they can come out of that.
And then we have our wheel tax, so we have collected 47,000. We spent 5480 on House Alcon Engineering. Jen and I went through and updated this. We were up between the two of us about 8,000. So the unassigned fund balance is a little larger, and with next year's audit, we'll actually do that correction. But I did correct it already up here as an assigned. So there's other things. The North Street project, we received a grant, so we'll be able to use some of this for that. And otherwise, they're working to finish up that House Alcon project also this year. So we have some dollars assigned for that. I should say coming out of the wheel tax fund for those. And then a list of all of the items that have been done already with the wheel tax dollars. And then the bonding, we still have the downtown. Here we also have House Alcon, this 135,000, and then the HVA system at the senior center. They're working on that right now. I hope to close this out actually at the end of this next year. We'll hold that library probably dollars until we'll let them utilize what they have in trust. And we'll pay them. We'll talk about that though. I'll get approval to make payment from the committee before I do that. So then I move on to my Any questions on any of that?
So when we hold the money of the 500,000, are we getting anything off of that money?
And I put all of that interest right into our capital. fund. That's where those dollars go. So that's not included when I show you the interest on here. Capital dollars are not in there. That's just straight general fund interest. The capital is separate. So yes, and then we'll add it in for the following year to be able to utilize that within our capital budget. All right.
On to the financial director report.
All right, so I filed the maintenance of effort report that was required because of the passage of Act 12. So we have to spend at least the same amount of dollars and or more for the fire department from year to year. That's what they're looking at, and also the ambulance. So there's a number of reporting requirements. I have to report to the fire departments that we go to, the districts that our fire department goes to, and then the ambulance reports to me. And then again, that report has to be filed with the state of Wisconsin. I think it was by the end of this month. So I took care of that. If we don't, they keep shared revenue dollars. So I have to make sure that these reports are being filed in a timely manner. Also, the TID reports, those were due by the end of June, and we did those a little bit earlier this year. And yes, I will be reporting to you next month on each of those districts and show you where they're at. Currently, you got a little bit of snapshot of where they were at the end of 2024, but then I can also provide you what our current increment is and then what it's going to look like this year, because there's a big difference in a lot of these districts of what we were getting and what we're getting today. Because he talks about we have to keep an eye on that deficit balance because we do borrow from our unassigned fund balance for that. But also that know that those districts are in actually really good shape right now. So I will report on those districts next month. Send out the MPIC, that's our Minnesota property insurance renewal. So when I get that, I send it out to all the department heads. Please look this over, make sure all of our property is on the list. So in case we have a storm or something of that nature, we're able to capitalize on our insurance policy. And then I worked on, he talked about the portion of the audit that I actually take care of. And that's the first 20 pages of the audit. So it takes a while to get all of the graphs and things together, because the graphs that he actually uses to present to you in the PDF those are my graphs from the first 20 pages of our audit. So I work through that, and then he actually audits that. So he doesn't take what I say and put it in the audit. He makes sure that it ties out to what the auditors know that it's supposed to be. So I sent some preliminary information to the health insurance consultant. I will be sending them an email here shortly. We just need to begin our 26 budget process. So start on that. Renewal first is usually the first thing that I start on. And then we want to do some things we're hoping to change when we move from insurance to insurance to just make it easier for the employees. I sent some preliminary, that's wrong. I supplied financial information to the wastewater treatment plant consultants for them to begin the analysis of the funding opportunities for that plant upgrade. I continue to work with Nikki, our new payroll HR coordinator, with training questions. Financial information for the meeting tonight. I attended the library construction ceremony. That was very nice. And then I continue to work through these two bondings for the state trust fund. Any questions on any of that?
All right, any questions? Got it. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Tim, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?